On today's show, we're casting spinners to wary trout. But not to worry, our fishing partner calls himself the Minnesota Spin Doctor for a reason.
Yep, that's going to be good there.
Next, we're off to explore a state park that's turning 100 years old this year. Whether you're out for a bike ride or in search of wildflowers, this place has a little something for everyone. And be sure to tune in to this year's Minnesota-bound Loon Cam. Larry Backlund, our loon guru, is back on the nest. Well, not really. Those stories and more, next.
Minnesota Bound. Brought to you by Minnesota's Select GMC dealers.
Hi everybody, Raven and I welcome you to the show. Raven says it's time to go fishing, so I think it is. Which brings us to our first story. We spent a day with a fella who calls himself the Spin Doctor. Spin Doctor? Yes, for good reason.
The spinner. Such a simple fishing lure, yet so effective. An underwater illusion. A ploy that fools the eyes of a fish.
Ooh, that's a nicer trout.
Seen not a spinning blade, but an easy minnow to eat.
That was a nice brown.
The fishing history of spinners is a little vague, but this much we know. First invented in France, spinners have been fooling fish for more than 80 years.
Seeing any more, John?
Yeah.
But nobody in Minnesota loves spinners like this fisherman. His name, John Eggers.
There's one. There he is.
Oh, we got a...
Oh, no. No.
Yeah, he was about 6 inches
But
long.
fishing with spinners is not the whole story here.
I was thinking it might have been a brookie.
Minnesota's Spin Doctor also spins a different tale.
I started using spinners back probably in about 65 or 66 as a youngster because they were very inexpensive. I think they were 60 cents, and I just fell in love with spinner fishing.
Then one day a long time ago, John, who lives in Rochester near trout country, discovered that trout also loved spinners.
Some people would say, oh, you're using spinners for trout. You must be some kind of a bubba.
A bubba? John, the Spin Doctor?
I guess I never thought about it. If a person is enjoying themselves, whether using bait or spinners, that's all that matters, as long as we're having fun. I spend at least 3 days a week in the water, so my waders never dry out.
Which explains why on this day, on a fork of the Root River,
We'll go up this way, downstream.
we walked along one of those unnamed scenic places, guarded by limestone bluffs, and decorated with dainty bluebells.
Pretty scenery there, John. Pretty scenery.
And so it began, casting spinners to wary trout.
Okay, the method we're going to use is we're going to get down in the water. Now their visual acuity, or their ability to see, goes all the way up over their head. But when you get down here in the water, you're almost behind them, completely invisible, and you can just about walk up behind them.
Right by their nose.
Right.
Okay. There's one falling. Oh, that was a nice fish.
With browns, you get about 1 or 2 chances, so that's a good sign.
A few casts later, a good sign got even better.
There's one. Got one.
Got him?
Yeah. Woo. Lucky there.
Popped him right out of there, didn't you?
Got lucky.
Ah, that was all skill. You got a poor net job, but you got a good fish.
Yeah, that's a dandy brown. Boy,
Oh.
he smacked that thing.
Well, Ron, you've done it for me.
There you go.
Still 100% this year.
They're beautiful. I want to get him in the water, though.
So it was time to move on to the rest of the story, to watch John the Spin Doctor in his spinner-making headquarters.
John, I'll say this. Your office decor doesn't get much better than this.
No, that's the nice part about this job.
How many spinners can you make, say, an hour?
About 45 to 50.
Really?
No. I usually make about 6,000 spinners a year right now.
That means John makes or assembles all the spinner parts. The spinner hooks.
I'm putting it right in between the jaws of my die here. Hold it in.
He bends the shaft wire.
Then we'll put the body on.
A few steps later,
There's my eye to my spinner. And now I'll double check it. Yep, that's gonna be good there.
and presto, behold, a spinner.
Now it's ready for packaging.
But it's ready to catch a fish as well, right?
Yes, sir, that's ready to go.
Ready to be sold at tackle shops or online.
Yeah, this is hooked on fishing. Hey, morning, Cody.
Sure enough, inside this Rochester bait shop, here they are, John's Spinners. Just waiting to be fished, spinners of every ilk. And all made in America, because that's important. All made in America.
I kind of figured maybe if I make everything in the United States, if our dollars will stay home, our jobs will stay home, and maybe our soldiers can stay home too.
That might be expecting a lot from a spinner, but we know this. John Egger's spinners do more than simply catch fish. Coming up, we're taking a walk in the park, this time Cooke State Park. Don't miss all the fun this park has to offer.
Minnesota Bound, brought to you by Minnesota's select GMC dealers. Connecticut. Open Air Solution. And by Jesse Treble's Safe Basements of Minnesota.
Time now to take another walk in the park, which is our series on Minnesota State Parks. Up next is Cooke State Park, a lovely place to visit.
People who have never been here before, I would say to expect the unexpected. It's a wild park. There are steep hillsides to climb. There's the rocky outcroppings along the river. There's this dramatic rapids going down the St. Louis. It gives you definitely a feeling of wilderness. Cooke State Park is located 30 minutes south of Duluth, Minnesota. Well, Cooke, when he came out to this area in 1868, he saw this powerful river and he thought, wow. So he bought up land all up and down the St. Louis with the idea of harnessing that water power. The land donation, although it came from Minnesota Power, it initially was his idea, and so we named it after Cooke. This is also a good place to see the River Gorge area along the St. Louis River and to see the trestle bridge that goes across. We have a paved bike trail connection that comes right out of our campground area and leads up to the Willard Munger State Trail. So it's 13 miles one way to go from the park to the end of the trail in Duluth. The swinging bridge has been here since 1924, which looked very different than what we see today. It looked really rickety, kind of, that Indiana Jones kind of style of bridge. So in 1934, the boys of the Civilian Conservation Corps built us the permanent swinging bridge with those familiar stone pillars that we see today. Altogether, we've raised the bridge 7.5 feet, trying to stay above floodwater. In 2012, the river rose to its highest ever recorded level, destroyed the swinging bridge, but the stone pillars that the CCC boys built back in 1934, they remained. When you come down to the bridge area, we have a unique rock formation called the Thompson Formation. Earthquake movements tilted them up and pushed it forward and started bending and folding the rocks. So they look like these sharp spikes sticking out of the water. Spring and early summer is a good time to come into the park because the river usually has risen, and it's rather dramatic. 15,000 years ago, the last major geological event occurred in the park, and that was the melting of the glaciers. But as that melted, The meltwater had nowhere to go, and so the park area flooded under a glacial lake. There's also another glacier up by Aitken. As that melts, it starts carving out a river valley that eventually forms the St. Louis River. We have 50 miles of hiking trails, everything from easy to intermediate to that really steep, difficult climb. So there's a little bit for everybody. If you like river views, you can walk along the river. Some have wonderful panoramic views. So right behind me is one of 3 overlooks that are located at Oldenburg Point. You're gonna see what the entire park looks like. All the land that you look out there, all the trees, that's the 8,818 acres of J. Cooke State Park. The park has beautiful spring wildflowers. This is a fun little plant. Jack-in-the-pulpit is usually hidden. It's a green plant, but when you lift the flap here, you see that it is rather brightly colored. These are yellow wood violets. This is large flowered bellwort. These are yellow lady slippers. Kind of a fun little plant. It's one of the orchids in Minnesota. People don't necessarily think of orchids being here, but we have many orchids. People also come to hear the birds. We have 190 different species of birds in the park. We eventually developed a campground in the 1950s that has 82 campsites. You know, people have been coming here for 90 years. Of course, they like to visit the swinging bridge and look at the river. They laugh, they giggle, they shriek. They like to see how the water moves underneath. Some people, though, don't like it at all. They'll stand on the edge, wait for their families to go across. That's fine, too.
It's that time of year again. Time to get loony with Larry Backlund, our Minnesota-bound Loon Cam guy. We take a look back at last year's loon drama while we wait for this year's to unfold.
Closed captioning is brought to you by the Yard.
It's time now to consider this invitation to see what's happening with our live Loon Cam. You can see it by going to mnbound.com as we take a look back at what's happened with the Loon Nest over the years.
Long before Minnesota's loons think about nesting, Larry Backlund is thinking for them.
We'll strip this off and put some new stuff on, make sure it's in shape, and then put some of this back on, and then take it out and anchor it out there and see if they figure it's home again this year. All the nest is just 4-inch PVC pipe with then just wire mesh over it to hold it in place.
What Larry offers a mated pair of loons is a floating platform.
Okay, and then we'll put another strip across.
For 3 springtimes now, Larry has been toying with ideas to help loons help themselves.
That one pulled loose over there again.
Larry's lakeshore neighbors agree. He's not gone loony.
I think it's wonderful that Larry has gotten Lake George in the loon business. We've so enjoyed having the loons here. We've had them here for years, but Larry is the first one that came up with this, putting out a nesting area for them.
To me, I'm not sure there's a much more beautiful bird than the loon, with that striking black and white plumage. And of course the call is, to me, it's sort of the quintessential mark of the North Country when you hear a loon calling. So just thought, well, give it a try, and if we can help them out with nesting, all the better for it.
And soon the loon nesting platform, designed by Larry, is ready to hit the water.
And we are off.
Choosing the perfect place for a nest is a guessing game. So Larry anchors his best guess, and now
We have done about as much as we can do. Now it's up to the loons whether they're going to use it.
much to even Larry's surprise, the loons acted as if they were a pair just waiting for a home.
Oh, look at this. There's one of the loons right out there. So we may luck out today that we've got one of the loons just off to the side here, apparently spotted us bringing the nest out.
When we return, we'll see if the loons go on stage, Larry's platform, and put on their own show.
Minnesota Bound, brought to you by Grand Rapids Tourism, Vino in the Valley, and by Track Your Boats.
Well, let's head back to the Loon Nest to see what's hatching or maybe missing.
Day in and day out on Minnesota's Lake George, Larry watched his empty nesting platform like a concerned godfather, or should we say, loon father. He built it, but with the loons nest on it.
One morning, all of a sudden, they were up on the nest.
We helped Larry set up a waterproof AquaView camera to spy on the loons. Turns out, in the life and times of Mother and Father Loon, there's hardly a dull moment.
Something that I'd never seen before, a whole different behavior. I realized pretty quickly that she obviously was getting pretty close to laying an egg. Once that started, within probably 10 minutes at the most, she laid the first egg.
2 eggs later, the loon pair were pretty much nest-bound for the next 28 days.
What I'm hoping to do is get the hatching of the eggs.
In many ways, Larry was sitting on a nest too, a TV camera nest, capturing loon moments never seen before.
The loons pretty equally share nesting duties. They'll come back and they'll come swimming up to the nest, and they'll just sit there for the one that's on the nest to get off the nest, and then the other mate that just came in will then get up on the nest and turn the eggs and get settled down. In fact, they go through a whole routine of getting the eggs just right and getting settled in and getting their wingtips tucked in around them. You got to give them credit for patience, because for 1 month solid, they're on that nest. In hot sun, in rain, in wind, and some pretty cold weather.
Now, if you're expectant loon parents, the 28 days of waiting is worth it. Finally, 2 baby loons hatch on Larry's platform. But it wasn't pretty.
The 2 of them started going at each other, had an all-out, knockdown, drag-out fight. And I think it's the proverbial pecking order that we always hear about. Once the chicks hatch, they will leave the nest within 24 hours, never to return again. From that point on, they're water birds totally.
Riding on the parent's back also protects the chicks from underwater enemies such as toothy pike or snapping turtles or big-mouth bass. Nature's laws always prevail, of course. As much as Minnesotans might like happy endings to their loon stories, shortly after the 2 babies were hatched here, one of the chicks turned up missing.
So, one of the great mysteries, what happened to the chick? We know it was there and it just disappeared out from under our eyes.
While life goes on for us, so it also goes on for loons. After all, one surviving baby loon is better than none at all.
That is cool. That is cool.
Oh, the lovely loons. Aren't we glad we made them our state bird? For sure. Well, that about does it for us. Remember to introduce the kid to the great outdoors. Take them fishing. Raven's going to take me fishing, and she is the star of the show.
Transportation provided by Premier Transportation, Call 1-800-899-7433. For more information on these stories and more, catch us on the web at mnbound.com.